Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for next week's 10 days. So today's second video, which will take us to around the 14th of February, actually to Valentine's Day. And we'll be able to extend out beyond that, the extended GFS and ECM ensembles as well. We'll have a look at 7th feature at the end of the video. For the next 4 weeks. That takes into the beginning of March. And we've also done the ECM 30-day look ahead. That's the first video up today. This afternoon, running very late today, so sorry about that. So that's the month-ahead look ahead for Europe, for UK, and for the rest of Europe as well. And it's looking pretty mild during February. We'll have a look at the week's 10-day time frame in detail in a moment. We've got the latest UK averages in for January now from the UK Met, so I'll have a look at that. I'll have a look at those charts very shortly. Just say, but on Friday evening, I'm going to do a live stream on the YouTube channel. So we're going to start at 7:45, probably run for an hour or so, probably 7:45 till 9, something like that. We'll have a little bit of a chat in the live stream with all of the viewers at Galsworth's YouTube channel, and you'll be able to take part in the live chat and ask your questions, and also have a little bit of a discussion about what's happened with this winter. No doubt we'll look at some charts as well. So that's me on Friday evening, 7th of February at 7:45 on the YouTube channel, a live stream. Just a one-off, a little bit of space, a little bit of time, space that opened up on Friday evening, so we'll do a one-off little live stream. So that's 7:45 Friday evening on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you'll know when the live stream starts. There'll be, when you subscribe, but next to a subscription, Galsworth, there will be a little red circle that comes up to let you know when the live stream has started. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, Galsworth's YouTube channel, and that's absolutely great if you do that. Right, so that's Friday, 7:45 in the evening. Excuse me. Now let's start the video then. As I say, we've got the UK averages in now for January. Still waiting for the CET to turn up, by the way. No idea what's going on with the centering temperature at the moment at Hadley, but we still don't have a finalised CET number for February, for January, and we haven't got the provisional CET started for February yet either, so they're very, very late with that. But we have got the UK-wide averages in. So in terms of the mean temperature anomaly during January 2020, you see it was widely a milder than average month across the whole of the country, set against the 81 to 2010 temperature average. We see widely most parts of the UK coming out around 1.5 to 2.5 degrees above average. Some areas, northern parts of Scotland in particular, and also some parts of eastern England, come out around 2.5 degrees above average, set against 81 to 2010. The lowest anomalies to average, still above average, but the lowest anomalies to average are for Northern Ireland and for southwestern England. There were around 0.5 degree to 1.5 degrees above average. But all areas having a milder than average January, certainly not what you want to see if you like your winters cold and snowing. This is the rainfall anomaly as well, the precipitation anomaly for January. So you can see most places actually had near normal rainfall, and eastern parts of the country as well as Northern Ireland had quite a notably dry month, particularly eastern Scotland coming out with an exceptionally dry month there, around 20% of average rainfall, whereas on the other side of the Scottish mountains, on the western side of Scotland, we see above average precipitation with one or two mountainous regions and the Outer Hebrides coming out at around 150% of their average rainfall. Northern Ireland was very dry, which is very strange actually. Western Scotland to be significantly wetter than average, but for Northern Ireland to be significantly drier than average. I don't think that happens very often. Normally when Western Scotland is wetter than average, so too will Northern Ireland be wetter than average. So that's quite strange how that came out. But we've got Western Scotland wetter than average, Northern Ireland significantly drier than average, eastern parts of England and Scotland also drier than average, and most other areas having near normal rainfall. If we compare that to December, which we can do, if we just flip that over to December 2019, there we go. You can see that December 2019 was quite a significantly wetter than average month, particularly in southern and southeastern parts of the country, and also the southwest Scotland too. It was only really the far east of Scotland and this northeastern part of England that were drier than average. Otherwise, December was a average to wetter than average month, whereas January 2020 comes out average to drier than average in most areas except for Western Scotland. We said in the winter forecast that we expected the winter to gradually become drier, so the wettest part of the winter would be early on. That doesn't mean that we won't get rain later on in winter, of course, but overall we expected like the flooding rains to be early in the winter, and the signal was for things to go a little bit drier later on. I think that side of the winter forecast has gone reasonably well. It's just the temperature side of the forecast that hasn't done very well, because it is turning out to be a significantly milder winter than we forecast. And then sunshine amounts for January show that on the eastern side it was generally quite a sunny month, particularly for parts of eastern England, also for eastern Scotland, with some areas between 110 130% of their sunshine. Western Scotland, though, northwest England, was significantly duller than average. So where it's been wettest, it's also been dullest, seemingly. Where it's been driest, generally been sunniest as well. This is all very indicative of a westerly Atlantic driven month, except for what's happened in Northern Ireland. How Northern Ireland comes out drier than average and Western Scotland is wetter than average, I'm not sure. But there we go, that's what the stats showing for January, and of course we are still waiting for that finalised CT for January 2020. As soon as we update it, Hadley, we will bring that to you, of course. So, doing some forecasting then, this is how the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking for the next couple of weeks. Looking at London today, this is old wetter central as well. This is the old wetter central view, which I like to use occasionally. Go back to the original charts at the original version of wetter central. Looking at London, so we're starting off close to average, a little bit cooler than average at the moment, and for tomorrow, then the temperature will start to lift up the second half of the week into the second half week and weekend. It becomes quite mild, and then early next week the temperature begins to fall away again into the second half of February. That's this period just here. It looks like we've got a more definitively milder than average period occurring. Then overall very up and down, still indicative of zonality, with cooler and also warmer and cooler and warmer and cooler and warmer sectors alternating with one another. Quite a lot of dry weather until the weekend, then it starts to turn more unsettled over the weekend and into next week, particularly through next week. Looks quite wet for a time, although we possibly see a bit of a drying trend again as we move into the second half of February. So the second half of February could start to see increasing influences from high pressure, but not high pressure to deliver Arctic or Siberian winds. High pressure will probably bring relatively mild conditions, albeit maybe depending on the position of the high, with risk of overnight frost. Temperature anomalies from the 4th to 12th of February, a little bit milder than average, not as mild as some of the weeks we've had through this exceptionally mild winter though. Precipitation anomalies from the 4th to 12th of February, overall a bit wetter than average, especially for the northern half of the country. It does look like to be quite an unsettled but relatively mild week coming up. This is how the latest GFS is looking. Well, I say latest, actually, as we're doing the video, the midday run of the GFS is just beginning to trickle out. This is 6 o'clock run of the GFS. As I say, I'm running very late today. So this is the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, and we see that on Friday the high pressure is there, but it's collapsing. As we go through the weekend, here comes our first band of rain moving through from Friday through to Saturday, and then of course that sets us up into a stormy spell of weather as we go into the second half of the weekend. This is Sunday, looking very windy, tightly packed ice bars, gale force winds from the west blasting across country. As we go into next week, not only will it be windy, it will also turn colder. We've talked about this in videos before. We have a bit of cold zonality coming up through the early part of next week, with the air originating off Greenland and pushing down into the west of Europe, and that could well drive in some snow into northern and western parts of the UK during Monday. Then we've got this area of low pressure that we've been keeping an eye on through the middle part of next week. The GFS is still showing this area of low pressure moving in from the North Atlantic. Got a very intense jet stream next week, which is driving in this stormy weather and zonality. And when the jet stream gets as strong as this, it is a case of look out, because you can get some very stormy weather indeed. And that's exactly what this GFS run is doing, deepening this area of low pressure like mad in the North Atlantic on Tuesday, the 11th of February. And then in it comes overnight, 11th to 12th of February. This brings severe gale force winds across many parts of the country, probably storm force winds around Atlantic and Irish Sea coast. Look at that, looks very horrendous at 6 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, 12th February. The saving grace is that the worst of winds look like they're overnight, mainly. So not going to be as many people around as in the day. And also, of course, with this, it's a long way out. The GFS is probably going over the top with this. But if it was to come off as this is showing, then we would be looking certainly at 70, 80 mile an hour gusts widely across Ireland, England and Wales, probably up to 90 or 100 mile an hour gusts around Irish Sea and Atlantic coast. Heavy rain rattling through, and no doubt snow on the northern side of the low pressure, which would be across Scotland. So Scotland, of course, is kept within the cold air of the cold side of the low pressure, so certainly risk of snow with that up in the north. That low moves out into the North Sea. We get this push of severe gales, so actually it is quite bad, because still severe gales blasting away through the morning of the 12th of February, so that will impact the morning rush hour then, of course. Finally, that low pressure gets over towards Denmark and southern Norway, and still with a very strong wind following in its wake, though. It's not until like the early hours of Thursday the 13th that we start then to ridge in some higher pressure from off the Atlantic. That does look very, very nasty. The saving grace, I say, is that it's over a week away. The GFS is probably going over the top, as it usually does, with cyclogenesis and creating these weather bombs. But it certainly is something to keep an eye on. Let's put it that way. I'm sure the professionals at the UK Met will be keeping an eye on what's happening, not only for Wednesday, but through most of next week. I mean, let's not forget, sort of Sunday to Monday is looking very stormy, with, in its own right, the risk of severe gales across northern and western parts of the country as well. So a very, very lively spell of weather coming up in the next few days, or from the weekend anyway, into next week. Now we're up to day 10, which is Friday the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, as I say, and we're wafting up a southwesterly wind, so looking a lot milder then. And as we're into extended range, we just keep low pressure coming. This winter with no winter goes on and on and on. And we get as far as we can with the 6 o'clock GFS run to Thursday, 20th of February, and still the low pressures are driving. We're still keeping this wet and windy but also mild weather going. Just no end to it. These are the wind gusts coming up over the next few days. This is from the weatheroutlook.com. This is based on the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. Starting tomorrow, Wednesday, relatively calm winds under high pressure tomorrow. As we go through to Thursday, we keep relatively calm winds going as well. Notice winds beginning to pick up in west on Friday. This is when things start to wobble a little bit and that high pressure begins to collapse. So the first bout of wet and windy weather spreads in late Friday into Saturday. 50-mile-an-hour gusts being forecast there at the Irish Sea through the early hours of Saturday. And pretty blowy, a pretty strong blow for all of us. Then we move to Saturday the 8th of February, and we keep things pretty windy then as well. Turns quite stormy overnight Saturday into Sunday, so 70-mile-an-hour gusts being forecast at the Irish Sea. And Sunday is a very windy, quite stormy sort of day with wind gusts widely 50, 60 mile an hour across the country. That takes us through to Monday, and we get some very windy weather down in the south on Monday with, again, 60 mile an hour gusts possible up the channel. So it's looking like a very lively spell of weather indeed over weekend into next week. Widely through Monday, gusts of wind up to 40 miles an hour through most parts of the country. Tuesday, also pretty windy, but worse of wind on Tuesday. It looks like it's in the north and the west, so Scotland being hit by potentially 70, 80 mile an hour gusts across the far north of Scotland on Tuesday. Then things calm down a little bit later Tuesday, although still quite windy, but notice out to west of Ireland what's happening there. That's the storm we were just talking about Tuesday through to Wednesday. And look at these winds coming in through the early hours of Wednesday. This is 3 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday the 12th of February. And wide across England and Wales, we've got 60 to 70 mile an hour gusts. Across the west of Wales and down to southwest of England, we're talking about sort of 80 to 90 mile an hour gusts in excess of 90 miles an hour. And then those wind gusts sort of push inland into parts of North Wales, into the Midlands, northern England. Again, gusts of wind there with these sort of pinky purpley colours are going to around 80, possibly around Irish Sea coast 90 mile an hour gusts. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was a 100 mile an hour gust. With that, if it came off as that is showing. Just say it's very windy across England and Wales in particular throughout Wednesday. This is midday Wednesday. So again, 70, 80, 90 mile an hour gusts there being forecast. Not as windy across Scotland because you're under the centre of the low pressure. But there you will probably have a greater chance of snow. And then as we go into the afternoon, then finally winds begin to moderate. It takes a while, but overnight Wednesday into Thursday, things begin to calm down. Still pretty windy, but things do start to calm down. Gusts of wind then going to around sort of 30, 40 miles an hour, which is still up to gale force probably. But it is certainly a lot calmer than those horrendous winds overnight Tuesday 20. As I say, it could be overdone. It could be the GFS going over top. But it does need watching very, very closely. This time GM was looking so high pressure collapsing on Friday. Saturday brings the first band of wet and windy weather in off the Atlantic. More wind and rain early hours of Sunday. Varying to a strong west-northwest wind with sunshine and showers on Monday next week. Cold northwesterly winds through Tuesday. Now, what does the GM do? Well, it does bring in a secondary area of low pressure. There it is, midnight Wednesday, heading in towards Ireland. Not making anywhere near as much of that low pressure as the GFS is doing. The low pressure zips across the country, so by midnight on Thursday, it's centred over Denmark. Now, it's possible there would be some very strong winds associated with that. Let's see if we have a 204-hour chart with that. So, yes, we do. So, actually, yes, it does bring some pretty serious wind across, particularly northern parts of England there. Some much more compact area of low pressure as well, which means there's far less of a warm sector with that. So, there would be a greater risk of snow on the northern side of the low pressure. So for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, there could be a dump of snow from that. Heavy rain across the rest of England and Wales. On the northern side of the low, the west side of the low, that's where the strongest winds are. It's not going as far with that storm as the GFS is doing, but it still looks pretty nasty. By the time we get through to Thursday the 13th, we're under a little transient bump of high pressure ahead of the next area of low pressure, which will rattle in at day 10, which is the 14th of February. Wet and windy weather coming back in off the Atlantic. ECM is looking like this. So once again, we're looking at mostly dry weather on Friday, but the ridge is collapsing. The first band of wind and rain heads in across the country as we go through Saturday and Sunday. Then we go into a spell of cold zonality from the early part of next week, bringing in wintry showers to northern and western parts of the country. The low pressure much further north with the ECM compared to what the GFS and the GM is showing. So this is the secondary low pressure at midnight on Wednesday, much further north, and a much sort of wider area of low pressure as well, meaning there's less potential for damage from that area of low pressure. It could still be very nasty, but it doesn't look as severe as the GM and particularly the GFS has that area of low pressure. So a lot to keep an eye on for the middle of next week in terms of this storm. The low gets out into southern parts of Scandinavia on Thursday, 13th February, and we turn wind into the northwest, bring back some colder air from the north. That's how I finish at day 10. Looks like we're actually having a bit of a cold snap at day 10, 14th February, with winds in from the north. That's different again to what the other two models were shown, because they have us in milder southwesterly winds at that point. Now, I haven't got the precipitation forecast up from Tameteo based on that ECM run at the moment, so I'm just going to pause the video there, and I'll get Tameteo up, and we'll have a look at the precipitation forecast based on that ECM run. So just pause the video, and we'll see you back in around 1 second's time. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to just go through the precipitation forecast based on that ECM run from Tameteo. So starting with today, a few showers around coastal areas today, but otherwise a reasonable amount of dry weather, and dry weather takes over through the next 2-3 days under high pressure. Going to be loads of dry weather. The first band of rain starts coming to west on Friday. Doesn't push across the country though until the early hours of Saturday. That band of rain is quite weak, but it is of course breaking down this ridge. And then after that we bring in a much more active band of rain Saturday into Sunday. It's in midnight Sunday, looking very wet and windy. At that point, that band of rain gets out of the way, and we bring in these heavy wintry showers to the north on a strong west-northwesterly wind. This could give a dumping of snow to parts of Scotland. Rain showers further south, just cold rain, as you tend to get with cold zonality, of course, on Sunday. Into Monday, wintry showers continue around these western coastal areas. They turn increasingly to snow as we go from Monday into Tuesday in the north and in the west as well. Then to the middle of next week, this is that storm system coming in as well. Remember, the ECM is not developing this into such a severe storm as the GM and particularly the GFS is doing. Nevertheless, it does bring a band of heavy rain, possibly snow in the north, and also gale or severe gale force winds with it. And once that gets out of the way, we go colder again with wintry showers coming back to northern and western parts of the country as winds turn into the northwest and then eventually into the north. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which gets us to the 14th of February. 30 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure to our north and northwest. So with that, we are bringing in a west-northwesterly or possibly even slightly northerly type wind, and that does include the operational run. 11 with low pressure again to the west, and probably a little bit flatter though with that one, slightly more of a westerly influence. And then 10 with low pressure driving in off the Atlantic, with that probably west-southwesterly. It's only a very slight differences in the placement of the low pressure areas, but it's important in terms of the overall feel. This is a colder option just here with more of a north-northwesterly. That's a milder option with more of a west to southwesterly. In 2 weeks time, these are the options that we've got. This gets us to the 19th of February. We have 27 members of the ECM ensembles, with low pressure out to the west and high pressure to our south-southeast. So turning dry, we're going more towards high pressure and also potentially very mild there. 16 with high pressure to the south and low pressure to the north, bringing in a rather mild west-southwesterly. And then 8 has us under an area of high pressure, and it looks like that high pressure is trying to get itself up towards Scandinavia. So that's probably the coldest option, with winds gently coming in from the east. Probably a lot of frost with that, I would have thought. But that's a minority option, of course. The other two options do look a lot milder. And then finally with CFS V2, these are 500 millbar heights broken down to weak periods. The first weak period takes us from the 4th to the 10th of February. The coming week will be dominated by high pressure across northern and western parts of Europe. Low pressures out to the northwest. We know that eventually this ridge is going to get broken down, though, by the low pressure from off the Atlantic. And then week 2 is back to the westerlies. It's the 11th to the 17th of February. Low pressure just driving off the Atlantic with those west to southwesterly winds as well. Probably quite stormy there. The ridge begins to reform in week 3. That's the 18th to 24th of February. High pressure then centering just to the southeast. Low pressure is out to the northwest. Very mild southwest winds probably coming up with that. Dare I said, a bit of a taste of spring. And then week 4 is the 25th of February to the 2nd of March. Lots of high pressure over and just to the east of the country. Low pressure out to the northwest. And yes, we still have those winds wafting up from the southwest. So late February, we get a taste of spring. Of course, last year, we had a taste of spring at the end of February. We had record-breaking warmth, didn't we? The end of February last year. We lifted the temperature up to like 20, 21 degrees across some parts of the country in the closing days of February last year. Maybe we'll see a repeat this year. We shall see. The year before that, of course, we had the beast from the east in the closing days of February. No sign of that this year. Well, that's how it's looking, though. So the main focus, I think, going to be next week's stormy weather. It begins to turn unsettled from the weekend. Sunday, Monday, that's when we get our first batch of severe gales. And then, particularly up to the middle of next week, it looks very, very unsettled and potentially stormy as well. So all eyes should be on the risk of severe gales from the weekend and into next week, and it could be quite nasty, so we'll have to keep a close eye on it. 5-day forecast tomorrow and another week to 10-day video update to then, so come back for tomorrow's videos if you would like to do that. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.